the Sealand family.
Hi, yeah. So for those of you that aren't familiar with what this is the Principality of Sealand. My grandfather declared it an independent sovereign state back in 1967. He then moved his wife and teenage children out there, known as well, we've heard it mentioned here as the OG seastead, or the original network state. So to take you back to the beginning, there was a group of British businessmen that basically weren't happy with the censorship of the UK government, so they set up pirate radios. And they were broadcasting from forts or from boats directly into the UK. And the government were chasing them around. And my grandfather set one up on a Mansell sea fort just inside the Thames, or just outside the Thames. The government chased him around, prosecuted him, or tried to prosecute him. So eventually he moved further and further afield until he found Ruff's Tower, which was just outside of territorial limits. When he got there, he didn't end up actually broadcasting from there, but rather, in an ultimate fuck you to the UK government, he set up his own country. So he issued passports, stamps, all the normal trappings of statehood, basically a flag, coat of arms.
So I'm going to try and zip through 60 years of history pretty quickly. There's a million interesting, amazing stories that I could tell you that are actually in my father's book, Holding the Fort. But I'm going to just cover some of the highlights. So in the early years, things were extremely tentative with UK government, rivals that wanted to take over Sealand. So my father fought off no less than 7 armed invasion attempts. The weapons of choice were Molotov cocktails and firearms. They were constantly harassed by the British Navy and government ships. There was actually a siege of Sealand by the British government. So they were blocking anybody trying to resupply Sealand. They were blocking my grandfather from getting out to his teenage children to give them food. So to break this, he managed to get a tug. He filled it with journalists, sailed them out to Sealand. The UK didn't stop him because bad press, I suppose. And the next day, across the national newspapers, was look at their starving faces with pictures of my father and his sister out in Sealand, and that was the siege broken.
He doesn't look very starving now, but...
Very true. For anyone who knows my dad, that's true. In 1968, there was a government vessel harassing Sealand, moving ever closer towards the fortress, and my father fired warning shots across its bow. When he returned to the UK, he was hauled in front of the courts, and the result of this was that the UK ruled they had no jurisdiction over Sealand. Shortly after this, the UK confirmed that Sealand residents pay no tax whilst residing on Sealand. The greatest story of Sealand, the one that's written into all the folklore, would be the coup d'etat. So in 1978, my father was out in Sealand on his own. My grandfather was ashore, and my grandfather was putting together a business proposal with some Germans, Dutch, and Austrians. And instead of following through with what they said they were going to do, they thought, well, we're going to take Sealand. It's out there. Michael's out there on his own. So a helicopter full of mercenaries were flown out to Sealand, took it over by force, holding my father hostage for 3 days. They eventually released him. He made his way back to the UK, regrouped with a bunch of Sealanders and my grandfather, and they launched Operation Trident, which was a dawn helicopter raid. They're armed with sawn-off shotguns. Literally came up to Sealand at dawn, abseiled down ropes, and took it back by force.
Liam, I know we don't have time for the full story, but could you tell the story of how the first shot was fired?
Absolutely. So my father was first down the rope, abseiling down. And he was so, I guess he was full of rage and adrenaline. He ran off the helipad, jumped, and as he hit the deck, the butt of his sawn-off shotgun went off right next to his face. Almost blew his head off. And the mercenaries and invaders ran out of the door with their hands in the air, and that was the conclusion of the siege. So a shot was fired, but that was luckily the only one. But interestingly, one of the orchestrators held a Sealand passport, so everybody else was released apart from him. He was tried for treason, found guilty, of course, and held in Sealand jail for 3 months. He was a German national, so Germany were petitioning the UK saying you need to go and get this guy back. This is your territory that's happening on. And the UK said we have no jurisdiction. So amazingly, the Germans sent a diplomat directly to Sealand to negotiate for his release, which is de facto recognition, of course. Yeah, I mean, the UK's followed really a path of acquiescence where they've tried to pretend Sealand doesn't exist, in spite of the fact that we do things and have done things over the years that would be at odds with their laws, where they would have a responsibility to act on it if in fact, it was under their jurisdiction. So, for example, there was a firearms incident in the 90s, and there is no record, no one was tried for it, and it was largely, covered up, essentially. In the early 2000s, there was a secure data haven, centralized data haven company founded on Sealand. It ran for about 4 or 5 years, I think.
It was about 4 years. I started the first internet provider in Philadelphia, and I don't know what was in the water, but Patri Friedman was a user, as well as Ryan Lackey. And I had moved out to the Bay Area to run engineering for a network company, and reconnected with Ryan and a gang of cypherpunk super nerds. We were looking at, a barge off of LA running some fiber, found Sealand, and there was a lot of drama and glory and Wired articles. And then when the drama died down, some stuff needed to be done, and their father and I kept it going for some time. The things that did not annoy the British were running body part auction sites and minor copyright stuff. The thing that did, because the BBC runs the British government and was annoyed by pirate radio, was when they said we're going to grab one SL1 ham country code and do contests, and they said we will stop this by any means necessary. And I think that's part of, as Liam said, the de facto, and I think that's part of the future we'll talk about, is it's a little bit of an iterative. It's a little bit of a bootstrap. Build the community, build the recognition, and get increasingly bold.
Yeah,
don't piss them off too much all at once.
Absolutely. So a little bit about Sealand today. Sealand's been continually inhabited for over 60 years. We have a global community that we know about, over 1 million people, so it's a pretty strong community, as James referred to it earlier, possibly the original network state. We reached a significant milestone with Sealand when we started the Noble Title Initiative. So essentially, people were allowed to become lords and ladies, baron, baroness of Sealand, and they pay for the privilege, and that payment funds Sealand. So shortly after establishing that, Sealand actually became funded by the community, which was massive. Before that, it was just blood, sweat, tears of the Bates family. So that was huge. Middle of last year, we launched a limited e-citizenship program. We allowed 2,000 people, roughly, to become e-citizens of Sealand. They were taken up by people in 105 different countries, although largely in the US. We have international sports teams: soccer, American football, athletics, open water swimmers, mountaineers. That's the Sealand flag at the summit of Everest.
So we've been interested, but I would say cautious, trying not to go for the moon, but think about how to use digital technologies, including chain, to build Sealand into the future and make it a base of projects and, yes, people. It is a physical world, but a lot of the expansion of Sealand is really going to be digital virtual, and probably supporting projects that I hope are federated across states and nations. As Leah mentioned, e-citizenship we launched. The goal of that and what you get for the citizenship is a bunch of privacy protecting services. So we're not doing identity yet. That's the big next one that we're looking at. How and what do we do for that? But I know a lot of people that do log in with Google and Microsoft and Facebook, and probably really shouldn't if they, it doesn't align with their ideals. VPN, raise your hand if you remember Usenet. Yay, before Reddit, yes. I run a Usenet provider, also Giganews, or own. I don't actually run it, but email, things like that. So problems that we're hopefully not all solving internally, but configuring to the way we want our society to run: identity, voting, governance, registration, supporting banking, and yes, some physical. And we'll show on the next slide what the plans are, but there are 7 stories of rooms in the 2 towers from the barge that was sunk to the seabed. We do have storage of digital assets, although lesson of HavenCo was don't centralize. So sorry, it was a dumbass. But so people do want to put stuff just on Sealand. We encourage them to shard and multi-sig and all that, but still can be an anchor for people looking to do things. And then in an iterative way, expand relationships and hopefully with other folks here and that have not yet started their projects.
So this is our vision for the Sealand of the future. It would be to rebuild the fortress into something similar to what you see here, of a modular style. It will support a much bigger permanent residency. We're hoping to attract builders, entrepreneurs, the kind of people that are in this room, to be honest. We think it could be something similar to the Próspera of Europe. It's located very strategically, only 30 minutes from central London, helicopter ride to Sealand, about an hour and a quarter from Amsterdam by helicopter. And yeah, it's going to be sustainable, modular, and the idea is to be able to build it out as the demands of the new city-state. So we're actually looking for people in this room to hopefully get in touch with us if you want to be part of what we're trying to do here. If you've got some good ideas, it'd be great to talk to you.
Service providers who want to pitch us, we've talked to some already, but we're actively looking, so it's not a pure sales call. We're looking for people to help with community, some on the tech side, and again, service providers. We'd rather use trusted technology that can be configured to the way we'd like to use it and is available for people to inspect in the open generally.
Yep. Do we have time for one question? Yeah.
So we've got a lot of legal framework over here. Have you guys developed a legal framework for service providers and stuff?
Ideas not instantiated on chain or fully fleshed out yet. We're actually looking for, and I think we might have found some people with experience in this room, but legal both in some of the jurisdictional and where do you anchor and root a startup nation, and on the legal framework, because the technology to put it on chain is one thing, but then the what's compatible with human commerce is another.
I think that's it. Gentlemen, thank you so much.